What's up, YouTube? I'm Brett from Rants. As always, guys, if y'all enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave that comment down below. We're on the road to 1,000, and we hope you guys can help us get there. All right, so it's taken me a little bit, but I've got through Jupiter's Legacy. I thought it was an absolutely amazing show. I'll be honest with you. I haven't been that impressed since season 1 of The Boys when it comes to superhero series. Um, but, but, I was reading this CBR article and I wanted to do a video of it because I thought it was really interesting what it was trying to state. And it was like how Jupiter Legacy, the article's title was How Jupiter's Legacy Proves the Golden Age of Superheroes is Basically Dead. And basically what it's stating about it is that, we used to have like Superman, Batman, all those characters, from the 1930s, 1950s, 1960s, whenever they were created, all the way up to the 1990s, and maybe even the early 2000s, where there wasn't much change in them. They stood for specific values. Batman had his no killing rule. Superman, always was the golden boy. He always did everything that was good and noble. And he was never tempted. That was kind of like one of the great things about him was he was, yeah, he had that invincible strength. He was basically a god in that regard. He could have taken out the world and, set himself up as king at any time. But he was never tempted about that because it just wasn't who he was in his character. I think you see a lot of that in Superman and Lois, is where Superman is so beyond that in a lot of ways. He sees things in a different light. He cares about every single individual person. Um, the Utopian in Jupiter's Legacy holds to this code, kind of like what Batman and what even to a certain extent Superman do. This code of where you do not kill, you don't use your powers to rule over people, to steal, to kill, to whatever. You don't do those kind of things. If you have these powers, you have to live up to a certain standard, and if you don't, you are risking basically chaos and destruction in a lot of different ways. And there's one instance that he's talking that I forget his name, Brainwave, or I forget his name, in Jupiter's Legacy, where Utopian's talking to his brother, and his brother's like, it still bothers me to this day that we didn't use our powers to stop, the bad guys in World War II. And think of all the millions of lives that we would have saved. But it's kind of like the utopian states. We would have been taken aside, and then we would have been playing the peace keepers of the world, and that wasn't where he envisioned them to go. He didn't. He believed that um, superheroes need to stay out of that in a lot of ways. Um, but a lot of these new shows want to push the envelope in a lot of ways, and you even see, you see it like with The Boys. They make a mockery out of what superheroes are. They want to make superheroes look bad intentionally. They want to show that, hey, basically, I guess really what the idea of The Boys is, even in I've read the comics, I've read I've watched the series. I love the series, and I like to a certain extent the comics. But basically, what it is people are never what there is. There is no good and there is no evil. There are basically only different versions of people. There are there's areas of gray, and I feel like that's the trend now. That's the trend. If you're a millennial, you've probably been raised up in this society and in this thing when it comes to comics and when it comes to movies and superheroes of Gray areas are the norm now. Gray areas are the norm. There is no Superman that stands up for justice and is decent and is good and is the golden boy. Now characters have to be flawed. Now characters have to be demented to a certain extent. Those are what sells now. And to a certain extent, I'll say this, I feel like it kind of almost speaks to our society as a whole. I feel like now we're kind of a little bit jaded. We actually don't believe that there is people that's out there that is good and decent just to be good and decent. We always think there's some ulterior motive to it. And I'll admit, I'm just as guilty of that as the rest. I mean, I'm very flawed in that one way. I mean, I always kind of be like, oh, well, that person seems good, but what is really behind it? And the more when I was reading this article, it got me to thinking, am I that way because of shows that are kind of like The Boys and kind of like, even in this, Jupiter's Legacy? Am I like that because of those shows? Because I keep thinking back in my own life, I've known really great people, and I've known them so well that of course, you don't ever know what someone's thinking, but you know their actions, and you know that they are truly good. So I'm like, why am I that way? I'm not that way. I'm not cynical when it comes to people because of necessarily people that I've seen in my own life. Of course, I've seen frauds, and everyone's seen that. When it comes to people that pretend to be great, and then they're, really are living a double life. Of course, everybody's seen that. But I'm talking about people that are close to me and people that mean something to me. And so I'm like, why am I cynical about that? And the one thing that after I read this article, I kept going back to was, am I cynical because even though I'm not a millennial, I did grow up a lot in this new age stuff when I was a teenager and so forth, of looking at the world and looking at whether it be the news media or whether it be partisan politics or whether it be shows like of these superheroes where that they push this narrative of there is no such thing as right and there is no such thing as wrong. There's just different people's viewpoints. Now, I don't personally adhere to that. I believe there is a right and wrong. I do actually believe that. I feel like when you even go back and let's say Star Wars, for instance, and you go back and you think about Star Wars, about how the Jedi failed because they strictly believed that in this code, and they believed that they couldn't see beyond their own hypocrisy in a lot of ways. I just feel like what I'm just trying to say is I think in a lot of these shows they intentionally manipulate people to be cynical of the world, to be distrusting of the world. And yeah, you can say, and I get it, this is the end thing when it comes to superheroes. The Boys, Jupiter's Legacy, all of those things. A cynical version of superheroes is the end thing. And you know what? They're trying to make Batman, Superman, and all of those edgier. They haven't gone to a great extent. They're always trying to do, to me, in my eyes, stupid things like, or not stupid things, but just really juvenile things like, oh well, like this new Superman film. They're like, oh well, it's like Zack Snyder was saying, oh, well, it's about time for a black Superman. Why? Is that supposed to make him edgier? Like, what is that? What when it comes to a fan base, is that going to draw people more to it because of the color of Superman's skin? Like is that going to make him more popular? Is that going to make Superman just as popular as with the newer generation as let's say, I don't know, The Boys? Yeah, or the characters off that. Like, is it going to make him that? No, it's not. It's not going to change a thing with Superman. The color of Superman's skin is not going to change Superman. He's as long as he stands for those, what I would say to a certain extent, kind of like what the utopian comes to a realization of to a certain extent, that his principles are outdated for this world. And that's not, I'm not saying that as a good thing. I'm saying that as a really, really bad thing in my views. That your average individual sits there and looks at the world in such a cynical fashion that they don't even know, that they don't even believe in a right versus wrong situation. They just believe in various different viewpoints. And I guess you could say, well, even some villains think that they're the heroes of their own story, and that's fine. But to a certain extent, we, in the, at least in Superman and Batman thing, when you've got villains that way, we look at them as delusional. But I feel like in these new shows like Jupiter's Legacy, like The Boys, we look at those and we're like, no, they're not delusional. They are just looking at it from a different perspective. Like, they put a whole different spin to it than what it used to be, a spin to it. And I, I've been thinking, that's been something that I've been noticing. Even when I was watching Jupiter's Legacy, I was thinking to myself, wow, that is so strange that he's so fixated on that number of where the average person thinks that you should kill villains. And he's so fixated on it because he's like, man, that goes against everything that I stand for. Like, what, like, I'm trying to keep these superheroes in check while the public is demanding that we use our powers in the most brutal of ways. I mean, so at the same time, I'm like, he's in his own mind, the utopian sitting there thinking to himself, wait a second, these people are counterproductive. They are really asking for their own destruction in a lot of ways. Um, and I think he would be right in saying that. Yeah, they do, because look, once you have a super, it's like whether it be Batman or Superman, once you cross that line of murder, it gets easier and easier. And if you had somebody that has superpowers, you would never want them to cross that line, because once they cross that line, there ain't no going back. Because a murderer is always a murderer. They never go back. They can't just stop being that. That's not how it works. Because at that point, people start thinking to themselves, well, it's justified because. And I will say this, I feel like that's where these new kind of superhero shows, especially, are going to. They justify being in this gray area because of society, or because of parenting, or because of various things. They never allow for a person is evil because they're evil, or because or a person should. They never push the mindset of, yeah, person might have had a sucky childhood, but they still have a choice in whether or not they do right or wrong. They don't push that narrative anymore. In fact, they push the opposite. They push that society causes these people to go to act out, and so therefore their actions to a certain extent are justified, and superheroes have to accept that fact. Um, and I just don't know what that does for society as a whole. But it definitely, when I was reading that article, it definitely got me to thinking, because I'm like, wow, that is a narrative that has really crept up on us, and I don't even think we realize how much it kind of changed. Something as simple as a superhero show changes young minds into believing that bad behavior can be justified. I mean, okay. I'm not going to say that there's that there's an absolute where that bad behavior is sometimes not justified. I mean, not yeah, just always not justified. Um, Sometimes it is. I mean, there is no absolute in anything, but I feel like that's not something that even nowadays that they even show in these shows. I just feel like the narrative has changed, and the golden age of the superheroes that are naturally good or naturally evil is completely gone. I feel like everything from this point on is in the gray area. And I just wonder what it's going to cost for a generation of kids to grow up with superheroes that are living in this gray area, that make excuses for bad behavior, whether it be for the villains they fight or the problems of the world or whatever. Like, what is going to be the outcome for the mindsets of these children that grow up watching that? And that kind of actually bothers me because I got young children myself. And, there's sometimes I feel like out there that, I try to teach my kids to be just decent human beings. And then they get out there in the world, and even at the young age that they're at, I start seeing, like, immediately people teaching them the polar opposite. I'm like, to me, life is very simple. You treat everybody good. You don't, you do the right thing for the right reasons. You don't be cynical. You be good for good's sake. Not because you're told to be good, but because you want to be good. I mean, I found out even in my own life that's almost an outdated policy. Now you be good, or someone's going to find something on your Facebook post from a long time ago, 20 years ago, and ruin your life. It's one of those things. We're good. We pretend to be good because if we don't pretend to be good, then people are going to bury us. And that's a very cynical way of living life. And I feel like that's a way, that life that we live now in the world that we live in is now carrying over into the superhero world that we watch, that our children grow up watching. And now the characters that they look up to in these shows um, are cynical. They're cynical, and they're not. They don't really stand for anything. Look. There's one thing my dad always taught me on things. My dad and my mom is you either stand for something or you fall for everything. I mean, that's just the way I grew up living. That's the way I teach my kids. You know what? Don't fall for anything that you hear. Use your own mind about things. Stand for your own beliefs. I don't even care what those beliefs are. As long as you're standing for something, then I'm cool with you. I'm proud of that. I might disagree with what it is adamantly, but at the end of the day, I'm very proud of my children if they stand for what they believe for. But I kind of feel like in this regard, I feel like society is now it's kind of going over to even the comics, the movies, the series that we watch, and the golden age of the hero that is just good for goodness sake is dead, and that's almost kind of sad. It's almost kind of sad. It almost kind of makes you wonder: is this the end of let's say Batman or Superman? Because let's face it, they can change the color of Superman's skin, but if they don't change the morals that he stands for and the way he has behaved for the last 50 years, then he's still going to look outdated. So at the end of the day, he's going to have to change who he is um, if they want to continue with the trends. Or they could do something that's completely different, keep them the same, and see if maybe this this growing trend of superheroes in this cynical superhero era fades, and that people look over there at Batman and Superman and they're like, they actually stand for something, and that's actually, even though it's a comic or even though it's a series or a cartoon or whatever, that's some things that I can be like, I like that message on that. I mean, we'll just have to see. But I will say this. I will say this. Jupiter's Legacy and The Boys has proven to me one thing. I do believe in my heart of hearts, though, that unfortunately the golden age of the superheroes that stand for something um, are dead. Are dead. And I don't know if they're coming back. I really don't. Maybe they'll come back if people start tuning out to some of these shows. But you know what? I kind of feel like society's going in that direction of staying in that gray area. So I kind of feel like um, nothing's going to change. That's the way I look at it. But guys, let me know what y'all think. I know this has been a long rant, but it's just one thing that was crossing my mind. I thought it was a really interesting article, about this. I absolutely love Jupiter's Legacy. I thought it was great. We're going to do a lot of topics about it here on Rants for Us. But that was just one thing that just crossed my mind, and I just wanted to make a video of it and just see if I'm the only one that maybe kind of feels this same way too about these heroes. Heroes are not what they used to be. And it's not because of any other reason than heroes are made in gray areas where it used to be good, evil. Simple as that. Now there's all these different levels of good and evil, and characters go back and forth depending upon which issue or comic they watch or they're on at that very time. So I mean, it's just strange that it's kind of worked this way, but hey, this is life as we know it. But as always, guys, let me know what y'all think. Y'all take care.